The diner was quiet that Tuesday afternoon. Sunlight poured through the windows, lighting up the worn wooden tables and the faded vinyl booths. The smell of fried eggs, coffee, and toast mixed together, making the place feel like a small piece of comfort in a busy world. The waitress moved slowly, wiping down tables with a rag that had seen too many shifts. Her mind was scattered between the work in front of her and the bills she would have to pay that evening. The diner wasn't crowded, and the rhythm of the day felt slow, almost lazy, yet heavy. She carried herself with quiet pride, despite the fatigue she felt in her legs and shoulders. She knew every regular customer, every habit, and every face that came in through the door. Some came in for coffee, some for a meal, some just for the warmth. Today, though, the only sounds were the low hum of the refrigerator, the occasional clink of silverware, and the quiet hiss of the coffee machine. Then the bell over the door rang. A woman walked in. She didn't rush, didn't look around with expectation. She moved with careful steps, almost as if each one took a little effort. Her coat was worn and frayed, a soft gray that had faded from too many washes, too much sun. Her shoes had scuff marks on the toes. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, but the tension in her shoulders told a different story. The waitress noticed it immediately. She had seen that look before. People carrying more than they could manage, worn out by life but still trying to hold on. The woman approached the counter, slowly counting coins in her hand. She hesitated before ordering, glancing up at the menu, then down at her small pile of change again. She ordered a simple meal, a small breakfast plate with eggs, toast, and bacon, nothing fancy, nothing expensive. The waitress rang it up, and the total came to just a few cents more than the woman had in her hand. The waitress watched her hesitate, saw the hesitation in the eyes, the tiny frown as she tried to figure out what to do. The woman's fingers trembled slightly as she counted the coins again, and her lips pressed together, quiet, almost apologetic. She wanted the meal, needed the meal, but something about her pride made it hard to ask for help. The waitress, feeling a tug in her heart, reached out without thinking much. She slid a $20 bill across the counter quietly, careful not to make a scene. She didn't say much, just smiled gently. The woman froze for a moment, her hands stopping in mid-count. She looked up, confusion crossing her face, then realization. Her eyes softened and the corners of her mouth lifted in a faint, hesitant smile. "Thank you," she whispered, almost afraid the words might break something fragile inside her. She wanted to refuse, to say no, to insist she could pay it back, but the waitress shook her head gently. "It's okay," the waitress said softly. "Everyone has rough days. Don't worry about it." The woman nodded again, a small, almost imperceptible nod, and took a deep breath. She moved to a corner booth, clutching her purse against her body as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. She set her plate in front of her, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to arrange her food neatly. The waitress glanced over from across the diner, curious about the woman's story. There was something about her that seemed sad but strong, as if she had faced a storm and survived, though not unscathed. She had been coming into diners like this for a while, always trying to keep to herself, always trying not to be noticed too much. She had a husband once, a man who had served in the military and had been proud of his service. They had shared a quiet life, filled with small joys and little celebrations. But after he passed, life had shifted in ways she wasn't ready for. Bills piled up, the house felt empty, and the weight of the world seemed to press down on her every day. She had grown used to doing things alone even when she was exhausted. Asking for help had never been easy. Now here she was, in a small diner, just trying to have a simple meal without making waves. And yet this small act of kindness had opened a door she hadn't realized had been closed. The waitress, busy with her work but attentive, noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor. She was relaxed just a little, breathing a little easier. Her hands steadied as she picked up her fork, ready to eat. Other customers came and went, but the woman remained in her booth, quiet and reflective. The waitress cleaned nearby tables, stealing glances at her every now and then. She wondered what the woman's life had been like, how she had ended up here alone in a diner on a Tuesday afternoon. She imagined the stories hidden behind her eyes, the memories of laughter, of love, and of loss. The woman ate slowly, carefully, savoring each bite as if it reminded her that she could still enjoy life, even if only in small moments. She glanced occasionally out the window, watching people pass by, wondering where their lives were heading. And in the back of her mind, she thought about the kindness of a stranger. She thought about the waitress who had offered a simple act of help without question, without judgment. It was a small thing, just $20, but in that moment it felt like more than that. It felt like hope. The waitress continued her work, cleaning tables and refilling coffee cups, but she kept stealing glances at the woman. She could see the relief in her face, the way her shoulders had loosened just a little. It reminded her why she did this job, why she kept going back to the diner day after day. Small acts mattered, even if no one ever noticed. They could change a person's day or even their life. As the minutes passed, the woman finished her meal. She sat quietly for a moment, looking around the diner, taking in the quiet hum of life happening around her. She felt a little lighter, a little braver, and strangely connected to the world again. She had come in tired and uncertain, worried about how she would manage. And now she felt seen, cared for, and understood, even if only by one person. The waitress approached her quietly, refilling her coffee cup and smiling. "Everything okay?" she asked. The woman nodded, her lips curving into a small, genuine smile. "Yes," she said softly. "Thank you, I really needed that." The waitress nodded, giving a small shrug. "Sometimes that's all we can do," she said. "Help a little where we can. Don't worry about it." There was a pause, comfortable and quiet. The woman sipped her coffee, feeling warmth spread through her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the drink. She thought about the life she had lived, the struggle she had faced, and for the first time that day she allowed herself to feel a small flicker of hope. Maybe things could get better. Maybe the world still had good in it, even when life felt unfair. Outside, the world continued, people walking by with their own problems, their own struggles. But inside the diner, there was a small bubble of connection, of understanding, of human kindness. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It reminded the woman that she wasn't completely alone. That sometimes help came when you least expected it, in ways that mattered far more than money or meals. The waitress went back to cleaning, her movements steady and rhythmic. She thought about the woman, wondering where she had come from, what her life was like, and what had brought her here today. She didn't know, and she didn't need to. All she knew was that she had been able to make a small difference, and that was enough. The woman finished her coffee and prepared to leave. She gathered her things slowly, taking care with each movement. She felt lighter, not just because of the meal, but because of the small act of kindness that had reminded her she wasn't invisible. As she stood to leave, she turned to the waitress, giving a small nod and a quiet smile. "Thank you again," she said, her voice soft but sincere. The waitress nodded, smiling back. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You'll be okay." The woman left the diner slowly, stepping out into the sunlight. She felt a little braver, a little stronger, carrying the quiet reminder that even small kindnesses could change a moment, a day, or maybe even a life. Inside, the waitress watched her go, knowing that she had done something important, even if it was small and unseen by anyone else. For that moment, the diner returned to its quiet hum. The sun shone through the windows, the smell of coffee lingered, and the waitress continued her work, knowing that life had a way of connecting people in the smallest, most unexpected ways. And sometimes all it took was one simple act to start a ripple that could grow far bigger than anyone imagined. The bell over the diner door jingled again, breaking the quiet rhythm of the afternoon. The waitress looked up from the table she had just cleaned and saw a group of men stepping inside. They were all wearing military-style uniforms, some with badges that hinted at rank, others simply casual, but their presence carried a weight of discipline and experience. Boots clicked on the tile floor, and the chatter between them had a mix of laughter and a kind of respect that only comes from years of shared challenges. They paused near the entrance, scanning the diner with sharp eyes, looking at each table and the people sitting there. Their movements were confident yet cautious, as if they were searching for something or someone important. The waitress felt a slight shift in the air. There was energy in the room now, a mix of curiosity and purpose. These men were not just passing through, they were here for a reason. The woman in the corner booth looked up when she noticed them. At first she thought it was just coincidence, another group coming in for lunch. But then she saw the way one of the men's eyes softened when they landed on her. Recognition passed between them, subtle but unmistakable. Her heart skipped a beat and she felt her breath catch in her chest. She set her fork down slowly, unsure if she was imagining what she thought she saw. The tallest man stepped forward, moving with a calm authority. He approached her table carefully, making sure not to startle her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "Are you Mrs.?" He paused, waiting for her to nod. The woman's eyes widened and a small gasp escaped her lips. She nodded slowly, her hands clutching the edge of the table. The man's eyes softened with relief and recognition. "We've been looking for you," he said. "Your husband. We were with him during his service. We wanted to make sure you were okay." The words hit her with a force she hadn't expected. Memories of her husband came rushing back, sudden and vivid. She remembered the way he used to laugh, the way he would sit quietly with her in the evenings, the way he had always been there, steady and strong. She had been living without him for years now, carrying the weight of loss alone, and suddenly, here were men who had been part of his life standing in front of her, offering connection and care. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back, not wanting to seem weak. I don't know what to say," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but there was gratitude in it, deep and raw. The man smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything. We just wanted you to know that we haven't forgotten him. And we haven't forgotten you either." He motioned to the rest of the group, who were now standing a few steps behind him, watching quietly, respectful of the moment. They weren't loud, weren't demanding attention. They were just here, present, offering a connection that had been missing for too long. The woman's hands shook slightly as she clasped them together. "I didn't know. I didn't think anyone would remember," she said softly. Her voice broke a little, and for the first time that day, she let herself feel the weight of her loneliness, the isolation that had been her companion for so long. One of the younger soldiers stepped forward, his eyes gentle. "Your husband always spoke about you," he said. "He wanted to make sure you were safe, that you were cared for, even if we couldn't be there every day. We've been trying to find you to check in to see if there's anything we can do to help." The woman swallowed hard, her throat tight. She wanted to speak, to say thank you, to explain how difficult life had been without him, but words failed her. Instead, she nodded and a small tear slid down her cheek. The soldiers didn't rush her, didn't push. They simply stood there, a steady presence, letting her process the moment. The waitress watched from a distance, amazed at what was unfolding. She realized that the small act of kindness she had offered earlier, the $20, had done more than provide a meal. It had given the woman a moment to breathe, a moment to feel human again, and now unexpectedly it had led to this reunion. The ripple effect of one simple gesture was becoming clear before her eyes. The tallest soldier pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "We want to help," he said simply. "Whatever you need, even if it's just someone to talk to. Your husband meant a lot to us, and we want to honor that." The woman blinked, overwhelmed. She had been surviving day by day, trying to keep her life together, but she had felt alone for so long. And now, in this small diner, surrounded by men who had known her husband, she felt a connection she hadn't felt in years. It was strange and unexpected, and yet comforting. She took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. I don't know where to start," she admitted. Her voice was soft, shaky, but honest. "Life has been hard since he passed. I try to manage, but it's not easy." The soldiers nodded, listening carefully. Their expressions were calm and understanding, the kind that comes from shared hardship and genuine care. One of them, an older man with lines etched deep into his face, spoke gently. "We understand. We've all been through things we can't always put into words, and we want to help you even if it's just a little at a time." The woman felt a flicker of hope ignite in her chest. For years she had felt like she had to face everything alone, like asking for help was a weakness. But these men didn't see her that way. They saw her as someone they cared about, someone connected to the man they had served with, someone worth their time and attention. They began talking quietly, sharing stories of her husband, telling her about the small, everyday things he had done that had left an impression on them. They laughed together, remembering his jokes and his stubbornness, and the woman couldn't help but smile through her tears. The memories were painful, yes, but they were also filled with warmth, reminders of the love and life she had shared with him. The waitress watched quietly, refilling coffee cups when needed, careful not to interrupt. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, a feeling that what she had done earlier had mattered far more than she could have known. One simple gesture, a $20 bill, had led to this reunion, to a reconnection that had been missing for years. The diner, quiet and ordinary just moments ago, had become a place of healing, of reconnection, and of hope. The woman's voice grew stronger as she spoke. telling the soldiers about the life she had been living since her husband passed. She spoke of the small victories and the struggles, the lonely evenings and the quiet moments of joy she still found in her daily routines. The soldiers listened intently, offering words of encouragement, sharing their own experiences, and reminding her that she was not alone. One of the younger soldiers leaned in slightly, his eyes kind. "We want you to know that you don't have to face things alone," he said. "Even if it's just checking in, even if it's just a meal or a conversation, we're here for you." "That's what your husband would have wanted." The woman felt tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of relief, of comfort, of the unexpected joy of being remembered and cared for. She realized that life could still offer moments of connection, even in the midst of grief and struggle. She had been surviving, yes, but now she felt the possibility of thriving again, with support and kindness surrounding her. As the conversation continued, laughter began to fill the booth. The soldiers shared more stories, some funny, some touching, and the woman joined in, her voice growing stronger, her smile more genuine. The waitress moved around the diner, glancing over every few minutes, smiling to herself at the scene. This was a moment she would remember, a reminder that small acts of kindness could have far-reaching effects, creating connections that changed lives in ways no one could predict. Time passed, but no one seemed to notice. The world outside the diner continued, but inside there was a bubble of warmth, of understanding, of human connection. The soldiers were not just visitors. They had become part of a story that had been paused for too long, waiting for the right moment to continue, and the woman, who had been living in quiet struggle, felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. Finally, the conversation slowed. The woman leaned back in her chair, exhausted but happy, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. She looked at the soldiers, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. I don't know how to express what this means to me." The tallest soldier shook his head gently. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just know that we care." "That's enough," she nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep in her chest. The waitress watched quietly, feeling a quiet pride and satisfaction. She knew that her small act of kindness had been the spark that led to this reunion, that brought these lives together in a meaningful way. One simple gesture had created ripples far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The woman finished her meal, her hand steady now, her spirit lifted. She thanked the waitress again, her voice filled with warmth and sincerity. The soldiers gathered their things, but not before making sure she knew they would continue to check in, to support her in any way they could. The diner had become more than just a place to eat. It had become a space of healing, of reconnection, and of human kindness. The bell over the door jingled one last time as the soldiers left, and the woman sat for a moment longer, letting the quiet wash over her. She felt a sense of hope, a belief that even in the midst of life's struggles, kindness and... The diner had quieted again after the soldiers had left, but the air still felt charged with the warmth of connection. The woman sat for a moment, staring at the empty plates in front of her, the lingering scent of food and coffee filling the space around her. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, grief, relief, surprise, and a strange soft feeling of hope she hadn't felt in years. The presence of the soldiers, the way they had spoken about her husband and their shared memories, had opened something inside her that she thought had been closed forever. She looked out the window at the bustling street outside, seeing people rushing past, caught up in their own lives, unaware of the quiet miracle that had taken place inside the diner. For a long time, she had believed that life would only ever be a series of challenges she had to endure alone. But now, with the memory of her husband being honored and the unexpected care from his fellow soldiers, she felt that maybe life could still hold kindness, even when it was least expected. Her thoughts drifted to the waitress, who had quietly observed everything from across the diner. The small gesture of handing over $20 had not seemed like much at the time, but now she realized how deeply it had mattered. It had given her a moment of relief, a chance to feel human again, and perhaps unknowingly, it had led to the reunion she had just experienced. She felt a wave of gratitude not only for the soldiers but also for the stranger who had reached out to her without judgment. The waitress approached the booth, refilling the woman's coffee cup with a quiet smile. "You okay?" she asked gently. The woman nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup as she gathered her thoughts. "I think so," she said softly. "It's just been a lot. I never expected any of this." The waitress sat down for a moment, though not at the table, just close enough to offer quiet presence. "Sometimes life surprises us in ways we don't expect," she said. "You did what you could to get through the days, and now, well, sometimes help comes in ways we can't plan for." She gestured slightly toward the door, her meaning clear. "Those men, they were looking for you. It wasn't by chance." The woman's hands trembled slightly, but she managed a small smile. "I guess. I've been so alone for so long that I forgot that people care. I forgot that connection is possible after loss." Her voice was soft, reflective, filled with a bittersweet mix of sorrow and newfound hope. She sipped her coffee slowly, feeling warmth spread through her chest in a way that had nothing to do with the drink. The waitress nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "It's easy to feel alone, especially when life knocks us down," she said. "But sometimes even small acts can create ripples we don't see coming. Today you felt it." The woman set her cup down, her mind still spinning with the events of the afternoon. She thought about her husband, about the life they had shared, and about the way these soldiers had come to her without judgment, without expectation. It was as if a door she had thought closed forever had been gently opened, allowing her to step into a moment of connection she hadn't known she needed. She leaned back in her seat, letting herself breathe for the first time in what felt like years. The world outside continued as always, people rushing to and fro, caught up in their own struggles and routines. But inside the diner, a quiet peace had settled. She realized that life was not just about surviving. It could also be about moments like this, small bursts of human kindness and connection that reminded her of the beauty still present in the world. The waitress cleaned a nearby table, glancing over at the woman from time to time. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her small gesture had meant something far greater than she could have imagined. Sometimes, she thought, the simplest actions have the power to change lives in ways we cannot predict. It was a lesson she carried quietly in her heart, a reminder of the invisible threads that connect people in moments of need. As the woman sat quietly, memories of her husband came flooding back. She remembered the way he had smiled when she was struggling, the way he had held her hand during difficult times, and the quiet strength he had shown even when life seemed unfair. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were not just tears of sorrow. They were also tears of gratitude, of relief, of recognition that love and care can extend far beyond a single lifetime. The memory of the soldier's words stayed with her. They had reminded her that she was not invisible, that her husband's legacy lived on in the lives of those he had touched, and that kindness could appear in the most unexpected ways. She thought about the laughter they had shared, the stories they had told, and the gentle way they had listened to her, offering support without ever making her feel weak or helpless. A quiet smile appeared on her face as she realized how important these connections were. Life could be harsh, but moments of genuine care and attention could heal wounds that had been hidden for years. She felt a sense of hope rising in her chest, fragile but persistent, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that she could move forward with the knowledge that she was not alone. The waitress returned to the counter, refilling coffee cups and wiping down surfaces, her movements calm and deliberate. She thought about the woman, about the unexpected way their paths had crossed, and about the ripple effect of small actions. One $20 bill had led to a series of events that neither of them could have predicted, creating a moment of healing, reconnection, and hope. The woman finished her coffee, her hands steady now, her heart lighter. She thought about the soldiers, about the way they had spoken of her husband, and about the promise of support they had offered. It was more than she had dared to hope for, and yet here it was, a reminder that life could still offer unexpected kindness, even when it felt impossible. She lingered in the booth for a few moments longer, savoring the quiet peace and the warmth that had entered her life. She thought about the future, about the small steps she could take to rebuild, to connect, and to find comfort in the support of others. The world outside continued its chaotic pace, but inside the diner, a small sanctuary had formed, offering her a moment of reflection and clarity she hadn't known she needed. The waitress approached once more, this time with a gentle curiosity. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" she asked. "Or maybe just talk for a little while. Sometimes sharing the burden makes it lighter." The woman shook her head slowly, but a soft smile touched her lips. "No, thank you," she said. "I think I just need a moment to take it all in, but I appreciate it. Truly." Her voice was calm now, grounded, carrying a strength she hadn't felt in years. The waitress nodded, understanding. She left the woman to her thoughts, moving back to the counter and attending to the small tasks that kept the diner running. Yet her mind lingered on the woman, on the story she had witnessed, and on the quiet but powerful way that human connection could transform lives. As the afternoon light shifted and the sun began to lower in the sky, the woman sat quietly, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about her husband, about the soldiers, about the waitress, and about the small act that had started it all. She felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, deep and sincere, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel hope for the future. The diner around her hummed with ordinary life, plates clinking, coffee brewing, conversations murmuring, but for her, the world had shifted. She understood that life could be unpredictable, that it could be harsh and lonely, but it could also be filled with moments of unexpected kindness and connection that reminded her of the good still present in the world. She took one last sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through her, and made a quiet promise to herself. She would remember this day, the way strangers had cared, the way small acts could create ripples, and she would carry that lesson forward. She would be open to connection, to help, and to kindness, even when it felt difficult or improbable. The waitress watched from a distance, wiping down tables and listening to the soft hum of the diner. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had played a small role in a much larger story. One act of generosity had led to reconnection, healing, and hope. It was a reminder that life was full of surprises and that sometimes, even the smallest gestures could have profound consequences. Outside, the world moved on, unaware of the quiet miracle that had taken place inside the diner. But inside, the woman felt a sense of peace, a fragile but growing hope, and the knowledge that she was not truly alone. The presence of the soldiers, the kindness of the waitress, and the memory of her husband had created a moment that she would carry with her forever, a moment of connection that reminded her of the enduring power of human care and compassion. The diner was quieter now, the late afternoon sun casting long, warm rays across the tables. The woman sat back in her booth, still processing the whirlwind of emotions from earlier. Her hands rested on the edge of the table, fingers tracing invisible patterns, and she felt a deep exhaustion. But it wasn't the kind that came from work or physical strain. It was a different kind of tiredness, one that came from carrying grief alone for years, from holding on to memories while trying to survive. And yet, beneath that exhaustion, there was something new stirring, a sense of relief, a small flicker of hope that she hadn't dared feel in a long time. The waitress moved about the diner, wiping tables and refilling coffee cups, but her eyes kept drifting toward the woman. She had sensed that something profound was happening, even if she didn't fully understand it. The reunion with the soldiers had been more than just a coincidence. There was a quiet beauty in witnessing it unfold, a reminder that the small, simple gestures we make can ripple outward in ways we can never predict. The woman took a slow breath and allowed herself to remember her husband with a gentle clarity. She recalled the sound of his laughter echoing through their home, the way his hands had held hers tightly during difficult times, and the quiet courage he had shown in every challenge he faced. She had missed him every day since his passing, and for a long time she had felt like those memories belonged only to her. But hearing the soldiers share their own recollections had been a balm to her soul, a reminder that the life her husband had lived had touched others in ways she hadn't fully understood. She remembered the way one of the older soldiers had described her husband's small acts of kindness, the ways he had looked out for others, even when he had his own struggles. It struck her deeply, because it showed her that her husband's influence didn't end with his passing. He had left something behind that continued to resonate in the lives of those he had known. And now, in a quiet diner on a Tuesday afternoon, she was part of that ongoing story. The waitress approached her quietly, holding a small notepad in her hand. "Would you like me to get you something else?" she asked softly. "Or maybe just sit here with you for a moment?" The woman shook her head slowly, smiling faintly. "No, thank you," she said. "I think I just need to sit for a little while, let it all sink in. But thank you for earlier. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't helped me." Her voice was soft, but it carried weight, full of gratitude and honesty. The waitress nodded, understanding perfectly.
"Sometimes a little help is all it takes to start something bigger," she said.
You don't know how far the ripple will go. The woman thought about those words, letting them settle in her mind. She realized that the ripple had already begun. The soldiers had arrived because they cared, because they remembered, and because they wanted to ensure she wasn't facing life alone. And it all connected back to that small moment. The $20 the waitress had given her. It seemed almost magical, how one tiny gesture could grow into something so meaningful, touching multiple lives in ways no one could have foreseen. She reflected on her own struggles. The long days filled with worry about bills, loneliness, and the absence of her husband. For so long she had felt invisible, as if the world had moved on without her. But in the past hour, she had been reminded that she was seen, that she mattered, and that there were people willing to step into her life even unexpectedly, to offer support and care. As she sat there quietly, the memories of her husband mingled with the present moment. She could almost hear his voice in her mind, gentle and encouraging, reminding her to stay strong and to accept help when it was offered. For years, she had resisted the idea, believing that she had to endure alone, that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But now she understood that it was not weakness, it was humanity. It was a recognition that life is meant to be shared, even in times of struggle. The waitress returned to the counter but kept glancing back at the woman, sensing that this was a pivotal moment. She knew that what had begun as a small act of kindness was transforming into something larger, a reconnection with the past, a reminder of human goodness and an opening of possibilities the woman hadn't thought possible. Minutes passed, and the woman found herself thinking about the soldiers' promise to stay in touch. They hadn't just come to share memories, they had come to offer continued support, to make sure she had people in her life who cared, who would help her navigate the difficult days ahead. It was more than she had hoped for, more than she had dared to expect. She felt a quiet swelling of hope in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee or the sun streaming through the windows. She thought about what life might look like moving forward. The thought was both comforting and overwhelming. She knew there would still be struggles, that the days wouldn't suddenly become easy, but now she understood that she didn't have to face them alone. There were people who remembered her husband, who cared for her, and who were willing to step into her life to help shoulder the burden. The waitress approached again, this time with a small tray of water and a fresh cup of coffee. "Here," she said quietly, placing it in front of the woman. "For when you're ready to think or reflect, sometimes it helps to have a small comfort while you sort through big feelings." The woman smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," she said. I think I'm starting to understand that life isn't just about getting through each day. It's also about moments like this, moments when people show up for you even when you least expect it." The waitress nodded. "Exactly," she said. "Sometimes we don't realize how much a small gesture can mean until we see the ripples. Today was one of those times." The woman took a sip of her coffee, feeling the warmth spread through her, and she thought about the life she had lived since her husband's passing. She had been surviving, doing her best to manage, but she had felt the isolation deeply. Today had reminded her that she was not invisible, that her life had meaning beyond the walls of her home, and that kindness could appear in the most unexpected places. She reflected on the soldiers' stories, the laughter, the tears, and the way they had honored her husband's memory. It had been healing, more than she had realized she needed. She felt a connection not just to them, but to the memory of her husband, to the life they had shared, and to the wider world of people who cared enough to reach out. The waitress moved around the diner, wiping down tables and refilling cups, but her attention kept returning to the woman. She knew that this moment, these hours, were significant. Small acts, gestures of care, and genuine human connection were powerful, and she felt privileged to witness it. She understood that the ripple effect would continue long after the diner had emptied, touching lives in ways no one could measure. The woman finished her coffee slowly, savoring each sip, feeling the warmth both physically and emotionally. She reflected on what the soldiers had promised, continued support, friendship, and care, and she realized that her life was beginning to shift in ways she hadn't thought possible. She felt a cautious optimism, a hope that she could move forward with the knowledge that she was not alone, that kindness existed, and that she had allies ready to support her when needed. The waitress approached one last time, placing a small napkin on the table. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here," she said softly. Sometimes people just need a little time to process. That's okay. The woman nodded, gratitude filling her heart. I will, she said. And I thank you again. For everything. The waitress gave a quiet smile and returned to the counter, leaving the woman to her thoughts. She felt lighter than she had in years, a sense of peace settling over her. She realized that life, despite its hardships, could offer moments of profound connection and unexpected support. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about allowing others to be part of the journey, to share the weight of grief, and to celebrate memories together. As the sun began to lower, casting longer shadows across the diner floor, the woman lingered in her booth, thinking about the ripple effect of one small act, the $20 that had led to this extraordinary series of events. She smiled softly, feeling the truth of it in her heart. Life was unpredictable, but it could also be beautiful, and she was beginning to see that in ways she hadn't before. The waitress cleaned nearby tables, her movement steady and calm, knowing that she had witnessed something special. One small gesture had grown into a moment of reconnection, healing, and hope. She understood that life often worked this way, quietly and unpredictably, bringing people together in ways that no one could foresee. The woman finished her reflection, feeling a quiet strength rising in her chest. She knew there would still be challenges, that life would not suddenly become simple, but she felt a renewed courage. She had been reminded that she was not invisible, that there were people who cared for her, and that kindness could appear even in the most unexpected places. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of possibility, of life moving forward with new connections, support, and hope. And as she sat in the warmth of the diner, surrounded by memories, kindness, and the quiet energy of human connection, she understood that her journey was far from over, and that, perhaps, it had only just begun.